Chapter 9. School was nerve-wracking. Every time Roy entered one of his classrooms, the other kids stopped what they were doing and stared. It was as if they were surprised to see he was still alive, with all limbs intact. After leaving algebra class, Roy heard a stupendous, phony farting noise behind him in the hallway. Garrett. He took Roy by the shirt sleeves and led him into the bathroom. "You look sick. You should go home early," Garrett advised. "I feel fine," Roy said, which wasn't true. He still had a headache from the thumping Dana had given him on the bus ride. "Dude, listen to me," Garrett said. "I don't care how you think you feel. You're sick, really sick, okay? You need to call your mom and go home." "What have you heard?" "He'll be waiting after 7th period." "So let him wait," Roy said. Garrett tugged Roy into one of the toilet stalls and locked it from inside. "This is so lame," said Roy. Garrett touched a finger to his lips. "I know a guy in Dana's PE class," he whispered excitedly. "He says Dana's gonna snatch you before you get on the bus home." "And do what?" "Duh." "Right here at school? How?" Roy asked. "Bro, I wouldn't hang around to find out. Hey, you never told me you busted him in the chops, too." "That wasn't me." "Sorry." Roy unlocked the toilet stall and gently nudged his friend out. "So, what are you going to do?" Garrett called over the top of the door. "Take a pee?" "No, I'm talking about you-know-who. I'll think of something." "But what?" Even if Roy managed to elude Dana Matherson this afternoon, the drama would start all over again Monday. Dana would resume the stalking, and Roy would have to dream up another escape plan. And that's how it would be every single day until school let out in June. Roy had other options, none particularly appealing. If he reported Dana to Miss Hennepin, she'd do nothing more than summon him to her office for a stern lecture, which Dana would laugh off. Who could take seriously a vice principal with one gnarly hair sprouting out of her lip? If Roy told his parents about the Dana situation, they might be alarmed enough to withdraw him from Trace Middle. Then he would end up getting bused to some private school where he'd be forced to wear the same dorky uniform every day and, according to Garrett, learn Latin. A third alternative was for Roy to try apologizing to Dana again, this time oozing remorse and sincerity. Not only would that be groveling, it probably wouldn't achieve the desired effect. Dana would still hassle him without mercy. His final option was to stand and fight. Roy was a practical boy. He knew the odds were overwhelming against him. He had quickness and brains on his side, but Dana was big enough to crush him like a grape. Roy remembered the time he and his father had a talk about fighting. "It's important to stand up for what's right," Mr. Everhart had said, "but sometimes there's a fine line between courage and stupidity." Roy suspected that fighting Dana Matherson fell into the second category. While he disliked the prospect of getting beaten up to a pulp, what worried him even more was the effect it would have on his mother. He was very conscious of being only a child, and he knew his mom would be devastated if something bad happened to him. Roy had almost had a little sister, though he wasn't surprised to know about it, or he wasn't supposed to know about it. His mother carried the baby for 5 months, and then one night she got terribly sick and an ambulance rushed her to the hospital. When she came home a few days later, the baby wasn't there anymore, and nobody really explained why. Roy was only 4 years old at the time, and his parents were so upset that he was afraid to ask questions. A few years later, an older cousin told him what a miscarriage was, and confided that Roy's mother had lost the baby girl. Ever since then, he tried not to give his parents extra reasons to worry about him. Whether on horseback, bike, or snowboard, he refrained from doing some of the wild daredevil stunts that boys his age usually tried. Not because he feared for his safety, but because he felt it was his solemn duty as the only child. Yet there was this morning, on the school bus, insulting the same pea-brain thug who already had held a mortal grudge against him. Sometimes Roy didn't understand what came over him. Sometimes he was too proud for his own good. The last class of the day was American history. After the bell, Roy waited for the other students to file out ahead of him. Then, cautiously, he peeked into the hall. No sign of Dana Matherson. "Roy, is something wrong?" It was Mr. Ryan, the history teacher, standing behind him. No, everything's fine, Roy said breezily, stepping out of the classroom. Mr. Ryan closed the door behind them. You going home too? Roy asked. I wish. I've got to grade papers. Roy didn't know Mr. Ryan very well, but he walked with him all the way to the faculty lounge. Roy made small talk and tried to act casual, while constantly checking behind him to see if Dana was lurking. Mr. Ryan had played football in college, and since then he hadn't gotten any smaller, so Roy felt fairly safe. It was almost as good as walking with his dad. You taking the bus home? Mr. Ryan asked. Sure, Roy said. But it isn't the pickup on the other side of school? Oh, I'm just getting some extra exercise. When they reached the door of the faculty lounge, Mr. Ryan said, Don't forget the quiz on Monday. Right. War of 1812, said Roy. I'm ready. Yeah? Who won the Battle of Lake Erie? Commodore Perry. Which one, Matthew or Oliver? Roy took a guess. Matthew? Mr. Ryan winked. Study a little more, he said. Have a good weekend. Then Roy was alone in the hall. It was amazing how rapidly schools emptied after the final bell, as if someone pulled the plug under a giant whirlpool. Roy listened closely for footsteps, sneaking footsteps, but heard only the tick-tick-tick of the clock mounted above the door to the science lab. Roy observed that he had exactly 4 minutes to reach the bus pickup zone. He wasn't worried, though, because he'd already mapped a shortcut through the gym. His plan was to be among the very last to board his bus. That way, he could grab one of the empty seats up front and jump off quickly at his stop. Dana and his cronies customarily occupied the back rows and seldom bothered the kids sitting near the driver. Not that Mr. Kessie would ever notice, Roy thought. He jogged to the end of the hallway and turned right, heading for the double doors that marked the back entrance of the gymnasium. He almost made it, too. Let's be crystal clear about this, Mr. Brannett. You didn't report it to the police? No, sir, Curly said empathetically into the telephone. So there shouldn't be any paperwork, correct? No possible way for the latest travesty to end up in the press? Not that I can figure, Mr. Muckle. For Curly, it had been another long, discouraging day. The sun had finally broken through the clouds, but after that, it was all downhill. The construction site remained uncleared, the earth-moving equipment sitting idle. Curly had stalled as long as possible before phoning Mother Paula's corporate headquarters. Is this your idea of a sick joke? Chuck Mucklehead snarled. It ain't no joke. Tell me again, Mr. Brannett, every miserable detail. So Curly had repeated everything, beginning from when he'd arrived at the site early that morning. The first sign of trouble had been Kalo waving a tattered red umbrella and chasing his 4 attack dogs along the inside perimeter of the fence. He was shrieking hysterically in German. Not wishing to be mauled by the dogs or gored by the umbrella, Curly had remained outside the gate watching in puzzlement. A Coconut Cove police cruiser had pulled up to investigate. Officer Delinko, the same cop who dozed off, guarding the construction site. It was because of him that the spray painting fiasco had made the newspaper and gotten Curly into hot water with the Mother Paula's company. I was on my way to the station when I saw the commotion, Officer Delinko had said, raising his voice over the barking of the Rottweilers. What's wrong with those dogs? Nothing, Curly had told him. It's just a training exercise. The cop had bought in and driven away, much to Curly's relief. Once the Rottweilers were secured on leashes, Kalo had hustled them into the camper truck and locked the tailgate. Furiously, he turned toward Curly and jabbed the umbrella in midair. You try and kill my dogs? The foreman had raised his palms. What are you talking about? Kalo had thrown open the gate and stomped up to Curly, who was wondering if he should pick up a rock for self-defense. Kalo was drenched with sweat, the veins in his neck bulging. Snakes, he had spit out the word. What snakes? Yeah, you know what snakes. The place is crawling with them. Poison ones. Here, Kalo had wiggled one of his pinky fingers. Poison snakes with shiny tails. No offense, but you're nutty as a fruitcake. Curly never once had seen a snake on the Mother Paula's site, and he would have remembered if he had. Snakes give him the willies. Nuts, you say? Kalo had seized him under one arm and led him to the portable trailer that served as Curly's office. There, coiled comfortably on the second step, was a thick, mottled specimen that Curly recognized as a cottonmouth water moccasin, common in southern Florida. Kalo was right. It was seriously poisonous, and its tail was sparkly. Curly had found himself backing up. I think you're getting carried away, he said to Kayla. Yeah, you think? The dog trainer then had hauled him toward the fence to point out another moccasin, then another, and still another, 9 in all. Curly had been flabbergasted. What you think now? Think Gallo is not a fruit bar? I can't explain it, Curly had admitted shakily. Maybe all this rain brought him out of the swamp. Yeah, sure. Listen, No, you listen. Each of dogs is worth 3,000 US dollars. That is 12,000 bucks barking here in the truck. What happens? Dog gets bit by snake? Dog dies, yeah? I didn't know about the snake. No snakes, I swear. It's miracle. The dogs, they okay. Pookie face. The snake came after him. This close. Kayla had indicated a distance of about a yard. I take umbrella, would push him away. It was just about then that Kayla had accidentally stepped in an owl burrow and twisted his ankle. Rejecting Curly's offer of assistance, the dog trainer had hopped on one leg back to the camper truck. I go now. Don't ever call me again, he had fumed. Look, I said I was sorry. How much do I owe you? 2 bills, I said. One for the dogs, one for my leg. Oh, come on. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I talk to a lawyer instead. Kayla's pale eyes had been gleaming. Maybe I cannot any longer train dogs. My leg hurts so much. Maybe I go on, what you say, disability? Oh, for Pete's sake. Mother Paula is very big company, has lots of money, yeah? After Kayla had roared away, Curly carefully made his way to the trailer. The cottonmouth was no longer sunning on the steps, but Curly didn't take any chances. He set up a stepladder and hoisted himself through a window. Fortunately, he'd saved the phone number of the reptile wrangler who had successfully removed the alligators from the toilets. The guy was tied up on an iguana call, but his secretary promised he'd come to the construction site as soon as possible. Curly had holed up in the trailer for almost 3 hours until the reptile wrangler pulled up to the gate. Armed only with a pillowcase and a modified 5-iron, the guy had methodically scoured the Pancake House property in search of sparkle-tailed water moccasins. Incredibly, he'd found none. That ain't possible, Curly had exclaimed. They were all over the place this morning. The reptile wrangler had shrugged. Snakes can be unpredictable. Who knows where they went? That's not what I want to hear. You sure they were moccasins? I never saw one with a shiny tail. Thanks for all your help, Curly said snidely, and slammed the trailer door. Now it was he who was on the receiving end of peevish sarcasm. Maybe you can train the snakes to guard the property, Chuck Muckle was saying, since the dogs didn't work out. It ain't so funny. You got that right, Mr. Brannett. It's not funny at all. Them cottonmouths can kill a person, Curly said. Really? Can they kill a bulldozer, too? Well, probably not. Then what are you waiting for? Curly sighed. Yes, sir. First thing Monday morning. Music to my ears, Chuck Muckle said.